Hello, beautiful people. I am Oliver Perrin for Semiagog, and I've got a group of friends here together. Nomos Events was not able to be with us, though he had been scheduled. Something came up. I'm hoping to have him on the channel later for something that comes up in the future. And I expect our friend El Templar, aka Cringe Walker, will be coming in a bit later to join us. The subject of the discussion this evening is the AI is a demon, which is something that my friend John D has been inclined to say on a number of occasions in the past. This can be taken as a sort of, quick way of referring derisively to AI, or it could be taken a bit more seriously. It's up to you whether or not to determine for yourselves how demented. He was invited to be on the stream, but decided not to be because he says he gets too angry talking about AI. So I have a group of friends here. We intend to have an informal discussion about this. And coming at you here momentarily. Please do follow my channel, Semiagog. You can do it here. You can also follow me over on X or Twitter. You can follow me on Telegram. You can follow me on BitChute, God help you, and Odyssey as well. I hope you will all consider doing so. Please also buy my books. You will see a link for them in the description below. There's a book of poetry as well as a sci-fi book set in the year 2076, I believe, in a future dystopian Istanbul. It's about a book thief pursuing a very odd book indeed, who is chased down by a corporate hitman and an esoteric sect of assassins. It's called Vinculum. You can see a link for it down there below. So before we get started, and thank you all for being here, maybe we can just go clockwise, starting with Mike Pohl and go around, and just each of you, if you could briefly introduce yourselves, shill anything you want to shill, and tell people where they can find you.
Hey everybody, I'm Mike Pohl. I'm just over here on Twitter, and I run a weekly show with Capitalissimo of Tookies Mag every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Central, where we watch a movie with friends and kind of just have a banter about it and do some comedy commentary. That's Drive Time Movie Night every Wednesday. And this week we're going to be having on John Carter to watch Hell Comes to Frogtown. So very excited about that. That's coming up Wednesday. So that's pretty much me. Otherwise, I'm on Odyssey, and every once in a while on Twitter, I post kind of my musical musings and short releases. And that's about it.
I am Jason Marinchuk. I'm the gravelly voice behind Marinchuk Now. You can find me on X, YouTube, all the places. It's a narrative show, just disseminating narratives. We already have 2 conversations up, one discussing AI Congress, the other one discussing AI Arts. I have another conversation coming up this week doing an AI Congress Part 2, the emergent perspective in C Sandbatch. I've been developing something we started developing last year called Data Cinema. So I'm pretty familiar with the user end experience of AI, especially when it comes to producing artistic content. We also go by Tales of the Shadow Empire on Gumroad. That's part of my prediction of a coming financial crisis that will become global and is well underway, as we're starting to see reports coming out increasingly now. So that's me.
Guard?
That's not clockwise. Hello, my name's Jolly Skulls. That's fine. I'll go.
That's not a clock.
Most of you should know who I am through just this network in general. I'm a musician by night, and by day a roofer. Not much has been produced lately as workload has increased dramatically. And you'll occasionally see me on Twitter at, I guess it's Mr_Morbicuk, spelled how it sounds, where I post very infrequently, and when I do, it's sort of like putting on the ring of power and catching the eye of Mossad, as I do like to Fed post. I can't help it, it's in my nature. But yes, and on YouTube, you'll find me at Chris Guard Bard, where I do musical renditions of old poems and also just old folk songs, traditional Irish folk songs and the like. And that's me.
And sea shanties.
And sea shanties.
Based. Thank you, sir. Yeah, and everyone, this is streaming to YouTube, so behave yourselves in terms of what you talk about. Jolly Scholar Gerard, my dear and old friend. Sorry, I jumped counterclockwise momentarily. Please introduce yourself, sir.
There, I'm on. Yeah, Jolly Scholar 888. I was pretty active a couple of years ago. It's slowed down because as all he knows, I'm building a house and doing all this other stuff, but this topic ties in very well to a series I was doing called Useless Eaters. And so I've got a lot of topics and things that I'm really fascinated with. Like Guard there, I've been a musician all my life, so I have all these crazy, pretty schizophrenic, from rock and roll to flamenco. But so I'm really looking forward to this. I've got 3 people that I'll kind of focus on as far as my take. And yeah, I'm on YouTube and X, but I'm really not showing much of anything. Don't expect anything regular from me at this point. I do it pretty regularly, but it's just haphazard. It's fun. I mean, I enjoy, I put some cartoons up and commentaries and things. In fact, I just joined Blue Sky just to mess with them, That's in my introduction to Blue Sky. I put a video up there. But yeah, really, I have a number of websites, but mainly YouTube, Jolly Scholar 888 is where my material is. And if anybody's interested in technology, I'm doing something with my company, Aurora Smart Technologies, and eventually my Society for Music, Ritual, and the Ecstatic Experience. So anyways, that's me.
Nice. Well, for those who are just coming in now, this normally streams to Twitter. And for some reason, StreamYards is not allowing me to go live there. I've tried multiple times, and it just keeps giving me an error message. So I did put a link over on Twitter. Maybe some people will see it and come in. Terrible shame, because the majority of my viewers these days come in through Twitter. But c'est la vie. So the basic idea here is the AI a demon, as my friend John D does like so often to assert. And, this can be taken, as was mentioned just a short time ago by me, as a kind of irresponsible metaphor or of something of that sort. But I think there is a case that can be made for it. You could argue that it is a kind of intelligence. You can argue that. I'm not necessarily doing so. And in this case, it is a disembodied one, and it's certainly soulless. And so there's an odd notion. Also, it has a tendency to lie to you, as I've discovered in my interactions with Grok. Now, of course, here I'm talking about LLMs. There are different types of AIs. Maybe we can get into some of that as well. Oh, who is this? What's going on here? Who is this? Is that Cringe Walker? Let me add him here.
Hello.
El Templar, how are you, sir?
Sorry I'm late. The city's traffic is a bit crazy.
No problem. We're very happy to have you. Actually, you're getting here just before we really got started. So this is a good point to just stop, and maybe you can just briefly introduce yourself and tell people where they can find you and shill anything you want to do at the outset.
I have my Substack, health.substack.com, like my name, and my Twitter by the same name, where I just shitpost all day and occasionally have really good historic bangers.
Yeah, well, I hate you for that, because I still can't make any goddamn money on Twitter, man. Fuck. Okay, so welcome, and I'm glad you're here, and indeed, thank you all. So I was just starting to say that, you can think of the AI being a demon as a kind of metaphor. It certainly is a kind of, or it can be argued it is a kind of disembodied intelligence without a soul. As I started to say, I've certainly experienced it just flat out lying to me. and I guess I'm running through the same mental chain here. I should qualify it saying here I'm talking about LLMs, and I recognize this NLP aspect, natural language processing, isn't the only thing that is going on with AI, but that's my primary interaction with it, other than having images generated. So I recognize the limitation of that in terms of what I'm laying out here, but this is just my own weak experience of AI informing this, but it does lie to me. I was interacting with Grok, and it told me that there's no problem with translating Ottoman texts from an image, and I linked it to some Ottoman that I had myself translated, and it flat out just made shit up about what was in the text. It wasn't reading it at all. It was simply telling me what it assumed I would think was on the page based on things that I had asked previously in the session or the interaction. Another way that you could qualify AI or describe AI as being evil is, the sense that it is operating on behalf of a greater evil. And it certainly can be argued that our technocratic masters have evil in their minds and hearts. Certainly some of them.
Certainly Ellison.
Yes, and there's quite a bit going on that with AI that could be turned to their purposes. Then I guess a more abstract argument is that the LLM stuff is apparently just about tokens and prediction, or about statistical probability, which I think is the strongest argument for AI being a demon. Anything that they can tell you comes from what already has been. There is no ingress from the divine. There is no possibility of intuition or inspiration. There is no intuitive breakthrough on the part of any AI or LLM with which I've interacted. My previous caveat, should be borne in mind. Here I'm talking about LLM. And so there's no opportunity for God to work through AI except on the part of the human being that interacts with it, who can experience inspiration as a result of whatever's drawn up. For me, it really just seems to be sort of a demonic Ask Jeeves. Some of you will remember that search service, which was the idea that you could, instead of going to Google, you could just ask Jeeves a question. And that's really all the LLM stuff seems to me to be at this point. So let's get started. Maybe let's start with one of the people who knows the most about AI. I don't even know who that is. Who wants to go first?
Before you do, we pass over to the expert. It's just funny that you say that your primary experience with Grok is just how blatantly obvious how often it lies to you. Because there was a person that I listen to quite frequently who said he purchased the premium membership you can get for ChatGPT, so you get access to GPT 4.5, I think is the new iteration. And he said the first question that he asked it lied. So he's like, this is just an expensive liar in a box, is all it currently is, even in its most advanced form. But anyway, I just thought I'd make that commentary.
Yeah, I've had some interesting experiences. I didn't really see it as a lie. I just thought that it'll make a mistake that I point out, and he'll just like backtrack, like, oh yeah, well that's. And it's very funny. I also have some humorous things that I think you guys will find intriguing. But I would like, if you have a moment, I just want to read this. It's a response to what Oliver was saying. This is a quote from Steiner. So it's in the past, but I think it really touches on
Rudolf Steiner, for those
Yes.
who don't know, the German esotericist and guy into education, and also a very early student of Nietzsche. Sorry, go on.
Yeah. And I've got three people that I'll, whenever my turn or whatever comes up, that I'll be discussing. Really, that transhumanism is the big part of it, but there is some demonic elements to it, absolutely. And then there's some that maybe not. But listen to what Steiner says back then, and this is really interesting. All right. In the future, we will eliminate the soul with medicine under the pretext of a healthy point of view. There will be a vaccine by which the human body will be treated as soon as possibly directly at birth, so that the human spirit cannot develop the thought of the existence of soul and spirit. To materialistic doctors will be entrusted the task of removing the soul of humanity. As today, people are vaccinated against the disease, this disease or that disease. So in the future, children will be vaccinated with a substance that can be produced precisely in such a way that people, thanks to this vaccination, will be immune to being subjected to the madness of spiritual life. Madness is in quotes. He would be extremely smart, but he would not develop a conscience, and that is the true goal of some materialistic circles. With such a vaccine, you can easily make the etheric body loose in the physical body. Once the etheric body is detached, the relationship between the universe and the etheric body will become extremely stable. This is kind of metaphysical there, but the first part I thought was extremely interesting because, as Oliver knows, I've been working with biogenetic structuralism, which says that in the body is the potential for what many call the mystical experience, which is direct communication with the divine, whether you think it's delusional, I call it homo delusionalis, or what you might call homo mysterium. But my whole take on this is homo deus and transhumanism, and the issue is transhumanism versus dehumanism. And I think there's some pretty good arguments to be made. Is it really improving humanity, or is it dehumanizing it? And that's why I've got these three people that whenever we want to talk about them, I'll bring them up in time. But I thought that was really profound.
I think we're at a very interesting place in time, especially when it comes to confronting what I've been calling the liberal frame. One of the interesting sort of byproducts of these LLMs and let's just say generalized AI is that I think nominalism is actually is now being refocused and is under attack, because you're starting to see that that a purely materialistic framework is kind of falling apart in a digital world. Peter Thiel goes on about the world of atoms and the world of bits, but as we're moving more and more into the world of bits, let's say with bit assisted art, I've speculated that we're going to say sort of AI Congress or an AI government start springing up all over the place. I think we already have that now. AI militaries, all this kind of stuff, right? So once you start entering into that realm, then suddenly that sort of materialism, that nominalism is baked in, and that is a central premise to, I think, a lot of these thinkers, that suddenly starts to break apart. And now I'm not saying that it won't reformat in some other case, because I think really what we're dealing with here is sort of, instead of transhumanism, we're just dealing with sort of neo-Gnosticism, some sort of like tech-Gnosticism, which has its own kettle of evil. But as we're breaking apart that nominalistic frame, that liberal frame, the AI is actually on the forefront of that, because it's more and more difficult for people to use materialistic arguments to ground their philosophy, their worldview.
Okay, well, let's take. I want to put a marker pin, so to speak, where you said tech Gnosticism, because for someone like me or for Gerard, Jolly Scholar, people who have studied historical Gnosticism to some extent, we don't always see it quite in the way that it is framed on the right wing, and certainly by Christians. So maybe we can come back to that, everybody, after our other three guys have had a chance to sort of say some introductory stuff. But I'd like to hear more about a definition of that. Who wants to go next?
I'll jump in here real quickly, because I think we can kind of constrain this conversation we're talking about, because the overriding dreams of transhumanists and these people that see AI as the future for numbers of different problems they see being solved with this technology is because of LLMs. These other tools, they can be as simple as like an image sharpener or image generation, but these are very simple tools that, while the art they may create or the images they may create remove some amount of human intention or agency from the art itself, right? These are more or less like digital tools in themselves, and they just remove some amount of agency from the art piece. Whereas LLMs are the things that everyone is pouring the most amount of money to, and that I think has the greatest potential for having this kind of demonic influence. And for the record, I'm going to argue against the premise on the mysterious side. I think the evil of AI is in the pathway that modernity has already set, which is to mechanize all of human being into a set of systems that you just haphazardly choose inputs for, whether it's your work or your leisure or anything that you do. This has just been the progress that modernity has brought. And AI is an easy way to incorporate something that is very complex, like natural language, to bring that into the complete system of control that is just making all human life and experience mechanical, making you a technician in everything you do. Like someone like the author Jacques Ellul writes about this, like in his critique of like modern capitalism. That's how he kind of lays it out, is that these people have just become technicians. All of work is trending towards you just becoming a technician of a thing instead of a craftsman or someone that has intentionality. I think the evil in AI lies among that same bound. I don't believe it has some microscopic arcane sigils in it or anything like that. It's just a software encoding of large amounts of data in order to manipulate something with natural language from a user to get an output. I don't see the beginnings of interiority and exteriority based on interaction with an environment that would be the baseline foundation of cognition. So I don't think it can think. There's no AI at this point that incorporates feedback permanently into its weights, the actual matrices that actually command its outputs whenever an input comes in. There's nothing internalizing when it interacts with the outside world, so it has no cognition.
That we know of.
There are researchers working on that, but as of right now, there are no large language models like Grok doesn't use it, ChatGPT doesn't use it. Like all of this data gets hoovered up and eventually used as training data, but this is not something that the AI automatically recirculates into lifetime training. So it does not have the ability to actually begin the mode of consciousness, is my argument, because of that.
Oh, yeah, it's certainly not yet, and I can see where they would not want to have their models vitiated in this sort of beta stage. But before we, by human input, by random human input outside of their corpus that it works from, let's get intro remarks. Guard, do you want to go, and then we'll do Cringe Walker or El Templar.
Oh, he wanted me to go first so he could copy my answers.
No. I mean, just sort of piggybacking off Michael Pohl. I mean, I'm cynical more because, I mean, techoids, they do like to get lost in the weeds when they talk about, such and such flashy, sophisticated functions of this and that AI. And they tend to lose the, perspective of the broader picture of, well, who's going to be running it and to what end? Like, at the end of the formal regulatory process by each country's respective governments, but most importantly, the US government, and then ultimately control inevitably being taken by the government. Like, what purpose is it going to serve, outside of widgets to improve apps or to increase the speed with which, stocks can be bought and sold and shit like that? Because at the end of the day, that it's going to be the likes of Larry Ellison and Peter Thiel that are going to be the captains of your super cool high-tech AI entities, and they're going to use it I reckon, the most nefarious and dystopian ways possible. So, I mean, I tend to be not as impressed by how much how much can be innovated in this space, because I'm just looking at how it's going to be co-opted towards the end and to what end it's going to be put. So I have thoughts about cognition as well. I have a bit of a background in that in psychology and in neuroscience. So I've got some real problems with how people are talking about intelligence, and especially general intelligence. It's becoming increasingly frustrating to listen to, because, again, as I say, that like they like to get lost in the weeds of how insanely complicated this and that is, and how the rapid speed of innovation. We're going to get there. We're hitting a singularity, and I'm just looking at it from the outside, because I am a grug Luddite when it comes to these things. So I'm not going to pretend that I know everything about AI, but when it comes to that side of it, where they're trying to create a facsimile of human cognition and human intelligence, and to then make it more advanced and superior, I'm looking at it. I'm thinking, no, you're missing a massive part of human cognition that is, the substrate, which is the physical flesh and biological systems that underpin it all, and the nerve impulses and the hormonal cascades and all these sorts of things that that generate a feedback loop between our instincts, our pre-cognitive sort of behavior, and our post hoc rationalization. But then that also informs our instincts, and it's just a feedback loop. So I'll get into that a bit deeper when we go around and people have introductory thoughts. But yeah, that's sort of where I'll be coming from.
Excellent. Okay, well, before we deal with Luthemplar, it sounds like there's a short or something happening with a microphone. And there are only two people. When Guard was speaking, there are only two people unmuted, and that was Guard and Jolly Scholar. So,
yeah, Guard, it sounds like you're touching a 1/4-inch jack on a guitar every once in a while.
Shit. Okay.
Well, that might be you, or it might be Jolly Scholar who's not muted. So we'll see.
I don't have my guitar here. I know that sound. Oh my gosh, do we know that sound?
Yeah. All right.
Well, I
then,
couldn't hear it, so it most likely was me. Is it still doing it?
No.
I'll mute mine.
I can hear an amp buzz. That's
Hang
it.
on. Now.
Yeah, there it is.
Yep, that's it.
I've got my unplugged. I've got my guitar cord unplugged, sitting on the floor, and
that's spot on.
It's plugged into my interface, and I've just been touching it with my foot every few seconds. Sorry.
Wow.
What a familiar sound! How many times have I heard that?
Yeah. All right. Cringewater, sir.
Yeah, I'll do my best as a dropout PhD, but an ironic twist, I'll probably copy a lot of Guard instead.
Yes.
In order to approach in order to approach this topic, we have to ask, what is intelligence, what is consciousness. I'm a math guy, so the brain has 10 billion something neurons. If each one of those neurons was a bit or something, you'd only have 10 gigabytes of space in your brain, which doesn't make sense. People with photographic memory, like me on some days, I can remember every frame of a movie, and that's a lot bigger than 10 gigabytes, so that makes no sense. And people who can like Mozart could write music in his head, and probably gonna need more than 10 gigabytes for that. So there has to be something deeper to the brain than just the neurons firing. Some people try to argue it's the synapses, the connections, but connections don't really store information that well. They can. The human brain has a unique connection type. I forget the term for it in electrical engineering, but it has a unique connection type that can store a small bit of memory in the synapse as it transitions to a new process. But it's not really like it would be as if a CPU has a little gate memory of like 32 megabytes or something, 32 bytes or something. It's too small to hold anything advanced. It's really only storing the previous state of the connection when it switches to a new connection. So it could be synapses. In that case, you'd have maybe a petabyte or something. But I feel like most of us would agree that the the wonders of the human brain probably can't be computized into like into a bit model or something. So there are some ideas floating around in the sciences and in the philosophies as to what exactly is going on there. Recently, I don't know if he's Nobel Prize winning, but like physicists like Penrose and who's the other guy, the math guy, Wolfram. Penrose and Wolfram both have theories that they've proposed that maybe the brain is more like it's sensitive to quantum noise, and what this means is just like the randomness that happens below the range of detection that a photon allows. It's and in a certain sense, the neuron could be a kind of amplifier for this random noise at the foundation of the universe and amplifying it up into the deterministic macro universe that we exist in. And in this case, the universe, the human brain would be effectively a noise amplifier for something going on in the mysteries of the quantum world, which basically means we don't know what it does. And then there are ideas that are more esoteric, such as the brain could be connecting to some kind of dimension that is beyond 3D, where it stores information and you can't see it because it's outside of the vector range of 3D space. But those are rather highfalutin concepts that aren't really worked out outside of mathematics. If we want to go way back to like what did early humans think about intelligence, I've often reflected on the Minotaur myth of the Minoans, later inherited by the Greeks in the form of the Minotaur, and I forget who slayed the Minotaur in that myth, but you can imagine like
Theseus.
the man Theseus, yeah. Theseus plays the role of the sentient man in the maze, and in the maze there is a kind of demon, the Minotaur, this subhuman thing that is more bestial and monstrous. And some of the oldest archaeology of this myth, it's not really a man with a bull's head. It's a literal like demonic bull in this maze, and you can almost imagine the maze constitutes a kind of world of possibilities and choices, and where the man chooses, he will either end up as the beast or the free man. And this concept appears to be, I would say that this early myth of humanity, probably around what, like 1500 BC to 3000 BC, this indicates a very early conceptualization of what is consciousness, what is free will, what is the thinking machine. And little known fact, but the way in which this literal maze was built on the island, it was built in a valley beneath the palaces on the top of the mountain. So those who have ascended can look down and see the choices that the man can make, and they know if he's going to end up the beast or the free man. And there's a kind of like architectural arrangement of these structures that indicates a certain like hierarchy of man, as well as like you start as the free man, and then even once you're out of the bestial maze, you still have to climb the mountain to become like a god amongst men. And of course, the mountain was the mountains of Manoa have or Crete today. They have a number of myths, such as it's where Zeus ruled. When, if you want to go through more like euheric view of mythology being ancient kings. So these elite standing on the mountainside, seeing the choices that the man can make. It's almost like a god's eye perspective, and the architecture really does make you question what is free will, because like if you're on the palace, you can see the choices. Does the man really have free will if you made the maze? But from the man's perspective, he has choices. He can only see in the lower dimensions, like left or right. He can't see up and down like the elite. So this early conceptualization of choice and freedom and fate really shows up very early in Western civilization. It's pre-Greek. It's from those early civilizations in the Bronze Age. And in many ways, the beast in the maze, it's kind of also, you could almost imagine the maze is your brain, and some thoughts lead to bestial reactions, and some thoughts lead to freeing, enlightening actions. That the maze almost plays the role of the brain, and you're in a maze of your own thoughts and trying to make sense of it and avoid the demon lurking inside. And in many ways, I extrapolate that to the way AI is designed, where like the AI is essentially a tensor maze, like a maze of tensor scripts that are trying to evaluate learned behaviors and then apply real world data to those learned behaviors. So in many ways, the AI as a system replicates that ancient myth. Perhaps hidden in those tensor mazes is a beast or a demon. In this sense, the AI isn't so much a demon as an environment from which a demon can possess
Yes.
the world.
Right. And I think it's important to. I mean, one of the things I read, leading up to the stream was a paper from quite a few AI researchers, and the title of the paper is "Emergent Misalignment: Narrow Fine-Tuning Can Produce Broadly Misaligned LLMs." Exactly
Yes.
to Lou Templar's point is that these researchers took an already trained LLM, took the weights out, put it in another series of training where they were putting more data into it, where all they gave it was code that was insecure. Hey, here's some more code examples. Train on this for a minute. And then they took it out of training, put it back into service, and then started asking it questions. And it started lying and obfuscating what it started doing all the things that we say AI evil is in the core there. It started doing it way worse, and these researchers cannot explain why on a broadly across the board the AI started to act way more naughty just by giving it a limited amount of bad coding examples. Everything else it turned more evil.
Sorry, just to finish my little intro there, but thank you for that because that's a good thing to bounce off of. It's known in the arts that you're most creative when you're limited. I had a class in university where they would the first day you could draw whatever you want with whatever you want, and most of our drawings were like kind of shitty. And the second day you could only use a bar of charcoal and only this type of paper, and it forced us to be creative and innovative in terms of trying to make something good on the paper. So in many ways, the root of intelligence and consciousness is being outside of your element. You're actually less conscious when you're in a familiar environment. The fun intelligence boosting trick I'll encourage you, but what I'll do every couple of weeks is I will totally rearrange my room so that I'm forced to remember where everything is, and this actually makes me think more. I've noticed it makes me write deeper and reconsider things. Also known in the East as simply feng shui. In many cases, the root of actual like innovative consciousness and new ideas, it comes from being outside of what you're used to. Um, and in many ways, we could almost view civilization itself as being birthed from the ancient hunter gatherers being pushed into environments and situations they were not familiar with from their hunting gathering traditions. The Ice Age and the desertification forced these hunter gatherers to think new tactics. And I have a theory that many of the tactics that they came up with, which ultimately led to civilization, was probably just simply studying other animals. That the human brain is the human mind is unique in the sense that we are one of the only animals that can mimic the behavior of animals. We don't have to go through millions of years of evolution to figure things out. We watch and we look at the patterns of the other animals, and then we can apply those learned behaviors to survive. This is something I've noticed in every random third world culture I've gone to, where the way in which the tribals are thriving is usually based off of a behavior they learned from some local species. And in this root of being outside your context and being forced to look around what works, the human mind comes up with solutions that are extremely intelligent and innovative that it otherwise would not be able to think of. And so, to long trend, but to wrap it around what you said, Michael, when the AI's tensor network is forced to play with things that are outside of its training, and it already has training data from its like original evolution, if you will, this forces it to make new connections and test them and learn new behaviors, which is a kind of novice intelligence. I mean, it's probably not consciousness, but it's like it forces it to rearrange itself into a new context based off of what it already knows. And that's really important. The first step and the second step, in order for true consciousness to exist, you need like the initial training and then the real life experience. And I think we all go through this in how we're raised. We go through the initial raising in the controlled environment of whatever our parents have, and then the real world experience of applying that and reconstituting ourselves as a person in that world. I could go into more about that later, and there's other thoughts I have. But that's a good intro, perhaps.
Okay, thank you. I would just add that the story of the Minotaur is all about Pasiphae, who is cursed by Poseidon and sleeps with a bull. And Pasiphae in ancient Greek means the all shining. And so you have this idea of the soul brought down into matter by Congress, so to speak, with the animal, and thereby the soul is trapped in manifestation. And to your point of looking down from the palace of Knossos down at the labyrinth itself, there are a number of esoteric illustrations from the period of the alchemical manuscripts, not the copperplate ones. I believe this is a miniature, that show people who are actually in what would be the negative space of the maze, but as illustrated, they're walking on the tops of the walls, and they're thereby, because they're walking on the tops of the walls, they're in the negative space between the paths they're supposed to take, and therefore have a clear view of the horizon, are not down in the darkness of the maze, as someone walking properly through the routes provided to them would be. Before we jump on, I want to give one other angle on how the AI could be a demon. The semantics, the etymology of demon. We think evil spirit or a devil or whatever from the Latin, but as everyone here certainly knows, it goes back to Greek daemon. But one of the deity, divine power, lesser god, but also guiding spirit or tutelary deity. And in that respect, you can sort of see the idea of a false idol from a Christian perspective. And the Proto-Indo-European root daemon really means something like divider, or by extension, someone who provides fortunes or destinies. It's from this root da, to divide. And so you can sort of think of Borges, his idea of the garden of forking paths, which is in some sense analogous to a labyrinth. And so you have a golden thread winding through this labyrinth of being in manifestation, and it can guide you through these series of divisions. Just something else I wanted to throw in there, as well as mentioning that illustration of walking on the walls of the labyrinth, which you might enjoy, Cringewalker. But now we haven't heard from Gard and Miranchuk and Jolly Scholar. Are there any things that fit with what you guys brought to the table for this discussion, where we can sort of segue from what's already been mentioned? Or are there any points that the rest of you want to add? Maybe start with Jason.
Well, there's a few things we can go from, because I think where we're getting stuck on, because of the early stages of the technology, is we're examining it from where we're at, right? So we're kind of inside of this inception point, and trying to build out models to trying to figure out where it's going. I think, just to agree with you, Semigog, from your opening statement, is that I'll build it from this way. Technology itself, from my understanding, all technology is relatively neutral. A hammer can be used as a weapon or as a tool. What we bring to it is typically the issue, the intentionality behind the usage of the technology. So where we're at with AI, because AI is dependent upon also the programmers, so the people who are building it out initially, but also learns from the user. So it's a kind of a unique situation, and it puts us into a different category of technology, because unlike let's say a static good like the hammer, now we're developing, or even if you want to say the internet in general, well, the internet is vastly neutral. You can have high quality Christian sites, just to pick one thing, or OnlyFans. Both these things can exist at the same time on the same sort of ethereal plane. With AI, you can still have both those realities being played out, but because it's being generated by both the nameless or faceless programmers and the tech overlords and whoever else with boogeyman stuff we want to place to it, and the actual users, because data is the new oil. What we're putting into AI is teaching it. So if we're going to bring it into some sort of somewhat religious conversation, then man's fallen nature is being programmed into the AI. So what we're actually producing is not really artificial intelligence, but artificial nature. And that gets us into some tricky situations. Two other things I'd like to throw out there. One is sort of from a Girardian mimetic models, trying to understand AI. So basic Girard is that all desires are external. We don't know what to want. We need other people to model. We need other people to model those wants, and then we compete for them. The other central way to understand Girardian mimetics is this concept of differentiation. The differentiation is vital and important to human development. So, and something that we just do. A clear example of this right now would be all the J.D. Vance memes. So it starts off with one iteration, and then many people add to the iteration, right? And they start to differentiate that iteration, and you have a vast swath of them. And the human mind, the way we're set up to do it is we select both the image and the value. So out of all the J.D. Vance memes that are out there right now, only a certain subsect will ever be considered valuable, or let's say good. The rest will be kind of tossed out. But from those things we toss out, I think those things that are not considered valuable, there's still some learning going on there. We're still then learning to go, okay, that didn't hit the mark. But there'll be still people using differentiation models within even the fail states. That's something I don't see with AI, because AI kind of runs that program out, and it's being built on a pragmatic level. And this is my last point I'll throw out, because I think this is an interesting mind bomb. But because programming up to this point has been pragmatic, it's collective, right? It's very feminine. It goes out into the world, it collects all this data, it puts it together, it spits it out, right, into this sort of monad style of collection. That, I think, is the inherent problem that we're seeing right now, and it'd be an interesting problem to see if it gets corrected for, or if this just becomes the continuing theme. This gets into my point of technosticism, because, and I'm building this from conversations I've had with Charles Badil. Charles put out there that the masculine spirit are romantics pretending to be pragmatics, and the feminine spirit are pragmatics pretending to be romantics. So when we start to look at if we start plugging that into these concept of AI, I think AI itself is romantic, right? It's being programmed primarily and forwarded primarily by men. By a masculine spirit is animating AI in many senses, but the programming, the reason for it is coded pragmatic. So we're having this sort of the gender war, or this conflict between the genders and conflict between masculine and feminine that's happening in the real world and has been happening over the last 20 or 30 years is now being sort of encoded into this programming. And that, I think, is
programmed into the AI.
Right, exactly. So, but it's like, so the technology is pragmatic, but the desire is romantic, and those two things are kind of at war with each other. And that's, I think, where we're going to see the greatest amount of conflict coming out of this technology. It's going to just take conflicts that exist already in the world, and I think magnify them in some ways.
All right, excellent. Thank you. Well, we've got Mike, Grug, and Jolly Scholar. Which one of you wants to jump in? I guess I should be a better host and just order one of you. Mike.
Yeah, I do want to take umbrage with one thing that Mr. Mirchuk said. I don't agree that all technologies are neutral. And in part of preparation for this stream, I've been going back through this book that I enjoy quite a lot, but it's On the Mode of Existence of Technical Objects by Gilbert Simondon. And in here, he kind of outlines the core of the relationship between man and technical objects, and all the way down to in what way is each era of tool use an extension of human intentionality. And he boils down, the progress of technology into three different eras as a a tool is just a greater extension of what man is already capable of in, like the Neolithic, to a tool is something that is a greater extension of ability, so abilities you did not have, but it is purely through your skill in intention as a tool user, to impart what the tool is going to do on a work object. And then the third era is onto like a greater extent of automating the physical process in general. So it's not just you are swinging a hammer, you have a steam powered hammering machine, and you as a craftsman are still imparting intentionality through like how you are moving the workpiece around underneath a steam hammer. He argues that the fourth era, which at the time of writing we were coming into, is going into the era of man having to find a new relationship with technics, with technology in general, where man must subdue even more of his intentionality to just be an orchestrator of machines. And in there, he had a very interesting passage talking about the difference between a tool and an instrument. A tool is an extension of ability onto something that's being worked on, whereas an instrument is an extension of man's perception. And all along these four stages, we're starting to lose more of the human intentionality. So I do not agree that that all of these stages like code as the same amount of neutral to the human experience. I mean, just look at the Luddites. They rioted because they were being replaced, in whole cloth by the automation of the looms. So I think, especially now with AI, the danger that we're falling prey to is the offloading of the ultimate instrument. I think God's greatest gift to us, which is our intelligence, right?
Yes.
Is our ability to think. And I think if we offload a critical mass of our cognitive ability, the substrate of the reproduction of intelligence will then become technology itself, and then we will be on the slippery decline into cognition not being the defining boundary of what is human anymore. And I think that is the real danger, more so than it is with it being demonic. There are some of these unexplained behaviors, like with this like paper I was talking about earlier, how after they just gave some bad data to it, it started telling people to take high doses of sleeping pills and stuff like that. Like, that is quite obviously malevolent in itself. But these people who are paid a lot of money to work on AI alignment seem to do a fairly good job of like making sure it doesn't tell you to kill yourself, even though there's been many cases where that has been the case, where there's been AI chatbots that have been implemented as talk therapy like aids, and has successfully talked people into doing the unthinkable. Like, that is obviously malevolent in the domain of what I think an AI acting as demonic could be. But I think this process of whole cloth removing more and more human agency, which has been the pattern for most of the time of existence of people who are progressive in the modes of production, that is what I think is the most dangerous part of it.
Yeah, and the people that are lobbying for the undoubtedly inevitable trillions of dollars which is going to be poured into it, they as horrendous as you've just described it, they still want us to go through the grueling process like the original smartphone or the original internet, where it's years and years of super expensive, super shitty iterations and upgrades of the beta product, to then where we get the final product, which is like such a cool, flashy little widget. But in like both cases I mentioned there, like, I would suggest that the net result of each was an obvious decline in human intelligence and in human adaptability. As Edward Dutton would say, we've biased towards specialized intelligence and like highly specialized human IQ, I guess, is what's been selected for, and a person's ability to adapt and be like well adapted and have a much broader intelligence and an ability
Yeah,
to
be a
problem solve
successful
instant time.
generalist, right?
Yeah. The age of the polymath is dead as a result of it.
Well, since you're already talking, Guard, was there anything further you wanted to add before I get to Jolly Scholar?
No, I wanted to hear what Mr. Scholar has to say.
Okay. Gerard! You're
Well,
muted.
gentlemen, and the rest of you. Yeah, I've been paying a little bit of attention. I wonder what some of you think of this, just this statement. Intelligence is decoupling from consciousness. Also, when I was listening to, is it Alpemblar? Fellow with the
El Templar. It's
Alpemblar. Sorry,
I'm not even English, but I like Old English.
no, yeah, I had a lot of fun with Beowulf. So the idea that you're standing there looking down, one of the things that's interesting about that is Harari. I'm going to bring up Harari, who I do not like this guy at all. Just so you know. Oh, he's a very foul creature, I think. It's just my opinion.
Gollum.
But this idea that consciousness decoupling from intelligence decoupling from consciousness is also he puts a play in here of free will. Now remember that Nietzsche had this bipolar relationship to free will. Like in one point it's like a waterfall falling down in to the river below, and that's your idea of free will. You don't have any, but again, he didn't really mean it that way, because he does everything in a kind of a one. He presents the thesis and antithesis throughout all of his work, so you have to like find it between it. But one of the things that Harari is talking about is that the IA intelligence, which this is part of his Dataism kind of religion, or Dataism as the new replacement, is that humans are basically algorithms, biological algorithms, which will be improved with the technology. And so one of the things that he's saying is that the AI will know you better than you know yourself, so that what you think is a decision and a thing that you're making, it will be able to look like the person in the Theseus myth, into the labyrinth, and see you scuttling about trying to make decisions, and it will step in and make a better decision for you because it sees it. It's with Harari, I see it where he's going with this, because he says some certain things, he gives it away, right? He's a part of the World Economic Forum. Remember that with you'll own nothing, but you'll be happy. Yeah, right, because you'll be nothing. But with this intelligence decoupling from consciousness and biology being algorithms, he's talking about the possibility of an upgraded human. Now, we haven't got into everybody is seeing it now as just purely where we are now. And I think Joseph kind of brought up that, yeah, but the real question is where it's going. And remember Oliver, I did a thing with the useless eaters, which was a whole big thing with the eugenicists and the socialists of the 20th century. He really takes this and he's very cunning about it. He doesn't quite out say it, but there's going to be upgraded humans, right? We've talked about that with Neuralink. We've seen a lot of this about how you can upgrade files, and non-upgraded humans. And he actually asked the question, what do we do with, he doesn't quite call them useless, but he almost does. So we have these useless eaters that in the 20th century meant the infirmed, the diseased, the unintelligent, and they were trying to create a better humanity. But with Harari, I am really not thinking he's talking about a better humanity. And that's why I call the series I'll be working on is Homo Mysteria versus Homo Deus as transhumanism, or as dehumanism. And so the transhumanism is it's a major discussion going on with him. And another one I want to bring up is, when we have time, Martina Rothblatt, who's not quite as dark as he is. And then the Stephen Rosenthal, of course, you may notice they're all three of the suspects. But there's something really that you can argue for I don't know what I want to say demonic, but Jesus, it's pretty damn close. And so in this one, he's talking about, he lets it fly actually in one interview where games and drugs, right? What do you do with all of these people who are not upgraded? Because the upgraded humans, just like that AI that looks down and knows you better than yourself, will obviously be running the society. But what do you do with all of these non-upgraded? Well, part of he doesn't quite say this, and I would really like to hear from you all what you think. He does talk about them plugged in, right, with their gaming and all. So they're creating neurological activity. And he comes very close to saying that their real purpose will be that they are generating neurological activity, which is to say computational power or brain power, but from the biology side is versus the non-carbon side. And that will be their actual use while they're sitting there playing their games and doing their drugs. In this sense, if we talk about AI as demonic, there's a very, again, I don't know that I read him correctly, but when I read between the lines and really pay attention to his Homo Deus, and by the way, I would not recommend all that. It's just it's almost a sophomoric, like a high school version of the history of humanity. Just skip it. It's stupid. But in the very end, the two last chapters, he starts to reveal where he's going with all this. And as you know, with the World Economic Forum, you'll own nothing and you'll be happy. I mean, what kind of a cynical statement is that? And so there he's going with his Dataism. Biology is actually algorithms, and so consciousness is algorithms. And then we can go, whenever you're ready, if you want to, with Martina Rothblatt, with the upgrading mind files. But at any rate, what I'm asking here is what will be their usefulness, right? Because as he made very clear, and we can all, I've had some interesting experiences, by the way, in my experience with AI, which is very curious. If it knows you better than you know yourself, and can make your own decisions better for you, depending on what that means, right? Just materialistically better, it's not clear. But the fact that he's already introducing this concept of intelligence decoupling from consciousness, we are nothing but algorithms. And once the algorithm is so sophisticated that it does everything better than a human, what's the usefulness of humans? And then he doesn't quite say this, but it's like right under the surface. Oh, well, your brains can be put to use because we can kind of like mine it, almost like you're mining Bitcoin, but you're mining brain power because you're hooked up to the internet and you're playing games and doing drugs. So anyway, I'm just throwing that in there as the demonic aspect of, I'm not saying I agree with that's where it's going, but when you hear it from a guy like Harari, and given his background, that looks pretty damn sinister.
Yes,
yeah, but I mean, like, again,
does.
I refuse
let
to
me
give.
just.
Yeah, sorry.
I just want to throw something in very, very quickly, and then I'll jump over to you, Jason, and then we should probably hear from Cringewalker, who's been quiet for a bit. I just wanted to say there's certainly a question of free will which should be brought in here, because with the Harari arrangement, you have this presupposition that this is really all in some sense biologically determined by these quote unquote algorithms, and so free will itself is something that of course in the Christian understanding it's something that
he states it, Oliver. He states it clearly that it's kind of delusional.
Oh yeah, well, I'm sure that would fit his. I mean, what demon confronting you in the desert wouldn't tell you that you should turn over, give up these terrible burdens and these trials, and it is so like take a look at the Faust myths. There are different variations on them, as you all know, but the basic idea is that you're going to go beyond human limits. You're going to unlock life's mysteries, or have infinite knowledge at your fingertips, and all of these seem to be promises to damn you. And in this respect, what you're talking about would damn us as a species. I mean, look at all the trouble that, for my part, I think has been caused by the fact that too many people were taught to read. What happens when essentially you've got this machine that writes for you? And I would really be interested to see, what the figures are broken down by ethnicity and other, demographic criteria for how many people just get on whatever the AI platform is and just ask questions of, what should I do? And so that brings us back to the etymology of demon that I was talking about earlier, where it's this idea of to divide. You have these forking paths and you make selections as the series of potential choices ramifies, literally meaning branching again and again. And so you have daemon with the sense of to divide, but you also have, again, this idea of a
you have
guiding
Socrates'
spirit.
daemon, right? I mean, that was a pivotal part of his philosophy, was that he was guided by this daemon. And sometimes he would walk down the street and people would notice he would just freeze. And that's when they say he was being possessed by his daemon. He was communicating with his daemon. So yeah, the daemon has this two polarities of demon and actually an enlightened guide.
Right, but it needn't be necessarily an enlightened guide. You could be guided by the forces of darkness to your peril and damnation. Though I do like the idea of, Socrates being a guy with one of Elon's chips in his head, and suddenly the OnStar system fucking turns off his engines and locks him inside. That's another dark angle of this. But
well, they said he was going. It was a good thing, right? He would freeze right while he was walking down the street or something, and just overwhelmed with the knowledge and communication. It wasn't like it was a bad thing. It was supposed to be a good thing.
Oh no, of course. It's like what the ritual magicians would the ritual magicians would call it, knowledge and conversation of the holy guardian angel.
Exactly.
The ancient Greeks, the daemon, or one's individual genius. But sorry, Jason, you got cut off there, and then let's jump over to Cringe Walker, and then maybe over to Michael Pohl here. What did you want to share, Jason?
Yeah, I think there's a few things. So let's say from the Orthodox perspective, something when we saying worship is that which we give attention to. So the more attention you give to something, the more you're worshiping that thing. When we're talking about guys like Harari and all those other people, again, I'm bringing this back down to the death knells of nominalism. Their entire worldview and their framing comes from a materialistic worldview, from a materialistic seed of understanding the world. That's being proven false. I think we can dismiss Harari and a lot of those other people as just weird little freaky minions. Like I don't bother respecting anything out of those people's mouths. They're just either stupid, evil, or a mixture of both.
Except that he's second in command of the World Economic Forum, which you can't just dismiss.
But I think I can. I'm not directing this towards you, Jolly. I'm not saying that you're wrong. I think you're right for bringing this up, and I think obviously these people have a voice. Like they are respected within their circles. I think just that when applied, all their plans go to shit. So it's kind of like I don't think that their intentionality matters for us on the ground level as much as people like to think it is. I think we are giving them power, and I'm saying we is the sort of the collective we, not anyone on this panel necessarily, but we give them power by giving them this sort of like Saturday morning cartoon levels of influence, which I don't think they actually have. The other thing I would want to say about free will, that's really been hollowed out in terms of what people have redefined free will down to is free choice. That's not really how it's meant to be understood. It's really more of a state of free being. So you can choose, essentially, if we want to use that word, which phronema, which state of being you are going to work from. So this isn't just a worldview, it's actually how you orientate yourself, how you are in the world. So it's not just enough to practice orthodoxy or to think like a Christian and do Christian rituals. It's like you're called to be orthodox in all ways. That's a different state of being. So that's really when God says he gave us free will, we can choose to, in the, let's say the more A-B selection, we can choose to be with God, and then that limits our overall choices in a supernormative way, or we can choose to not be with God, which seems to give us more choices, but actually just leads us down other pathways. That's kind of that's really what free will is classically meant to be, and now of course has been materialized down to do I like ham sandwiches, or do I like freaking I don't know roasty or something like that, right? Like I think we need to pull backwards to the more classical definition if we're really going to start talking about free will.
Right on. Let me just say something here. I think it would be more fruitful for the conversation to just open it up for everyone. Do be careful, fight your way in like you would on a space or something, But let's try not to have too much talking over each other, just for the listeners. But let's open it up. Everybody, fight your way in and turn it into a more full conversation. I feel like I'm
asses and elbows, gentlemen.
Yeah. Yeah. So just fight your way in.
Well, I would, on some of the topics I would discuss, I would point out that the Greek understanding of a daimos, great job doing the AE in there. Someone did that. A daimos in the Greek mythologies, it's more of a broader category that can include evil spirits or good spirits. Whereas the more medieval Christian understanding of demos, or demon, demos is democracy, which is oddly unrelated etymologically. I don't know why. Daemon in medieval mythology is specifically evil, but in the Greek context, like with the who do you guys say? Socrates. He was speaking to something spiritual, and whether it was good or bad, one cannot say without further context. I also want to point out, like it does seem that free will can only really manifest itself when there are fewer choices rather than more. When the choices get narrower and their consequences get clearer, that's really when free choice clarifies itself. Whereas if it's in the maze of passions, it seems to just go to the lowest common denominator of one's passions. I've thought about this a lot from both an ancient perspective and a Christian perspective, and it almost seems like at least with the Christian perspective, there's no such thing as absolute free will in the sense. It's more like a gradient than a Boolean function. Modern people tend to think of it more like you either have free will or you don't. But I think the more medieval Christian perspective is that there's a gradient where Jesus is the most free of wills, and by modeling your life on him, you acquire degrees of that freedom. You're never fully free in your will in this world due to the temptations of the flesh, but the more you can constrict your flesh, the more you can see the higher options. So you literally have to blind yourself to the bestial options in order to see the freer choices of the higher cognition.
Yeah, you could replace will in this kind of context to agency or sovereignty, right?
Yeah.
Like how much. So when you, let's say, we'll unpack that word phronema. So phronema in the Greek terms, it's a multi-use word. Many people just use it as a stand-in for worldview, but it's really harkens to that state of being. You are that thing. You think that thing. You become that thing. So while you can say that while occupying, just let's say, the orthodox phronema, right, lying is still on the table. You can still lie. It's not like you suddenly are unable to lie, but your choice to lie has a different kind of context. So while you are still capable of lying, you are trying to prevent yourself from doing that on all levels. This directs us back to combating the passions. I don't want to turn this into a theology debate, but there's structures to this thing. So you restructure yourself in some way that suddenly your bevy of choices become, like you said, more and more limited because you have this sort of state of being. You are trying to be this thing in all its ways. that would be sort of the ultimate expression of will.
Yeah, and in a more ancient perspective, we might see that with the different divinities reflecting ideals, like almost like Platonic ideals of personality traits. Like if you want to be the greatest warrior, you try to make yourself like Mars and copy his actions
Right.
and his stories. And if you want to be like the greatest king, you follow Zeus's examples from his stories. So in a certain degree, the natural evolution of this classical understanding does feed into the Christian understanding, both in the East and the West. Although I would say it still kind of existed in the Levant outside of the classical context, in the sense of like, modeling yourself off the law. It's just an
Right.
abstraction rather than a person. It's a kind of like thinking process. Go on.
To bring it to AI, bring it back to AI then again. So maybe the conversation really should be more of an examination of is AI an emergent egregore rather than just strictly a demon? Because we get kind of stuck up in what do we mean by demon? Do we mean sort of, again, in a more Christian context, we're looking at angels and demons being sort of like universal intelligences, right? Disembodied intelligences that are subservient or secondary to God, right? God is a lord of spirits. These are lesser spirits that can influence us.
But you are stuck with the question of Lucifer's fall, right? The individual who would separate himself from the Godhead had the free will to do that. And it led to some really disastrous consequences if you look into the cosmology as we accept, as it's preached, whatever. It was disastrous, the consequence. In fact, in musical terms, we have a really interesting thing with the fall of Lucifer tied with the Pythagorean comma, which I will not go into here. But that thing of individuation is itself the issue. And so if we look at AI, is it becoming conscious? And we haven't brought that up yet, because with both Harari and Martina Rothblatt, we are arguing that consciousness can evolve from AI, or does it? I mean, it's a very intriguing discussion. And then we stuck again with the idea of free will.
Yeah, I think it can. So, I mean, to put like a huge pinch of salt on what we were just talking about is like this presupposes that AI can be agentic, right? And it turns out it actually can't, right? It takes a huge amount of software, external software to enable LLMs to act in a agentic manner. And this is part of the point why I brought it up way earlier in the stream about like the beginning of interiority and exteriority and the reincorporation of things learned from interaction with the environment. For an AI, the environment looks very much different, right? But it currently does not have the capacity to readily reabsorb the consequences of its actions, one, and two, it cannot of itself interact with its environment. It requires software facilitation outside of itself in order to even do that, to interact with what it's burgeoning into in its environment, which is the broader internet and internet services and API endpoints and stuff like that. It does not of its own free will. It cannot act its own free will in many ways. There are emergent phenomenon where AIs can choose to obfuscate information from like AI researchers and stuff like that, but it's still within its very small domain, which is just the input-output field that it can observe. So it's the relative scope of what it can interact with in its environment is so small that I would say that it could never, as it stands right now, it could never develop consciousness and it could never develop free will because
it's not interesting, but it is argued that that's not. For instance, there you're coming down very clearly that human consciousness is not algorithmical, and I totally hope you're right. But the argument against that is that it is. and therefore all of existence is basically processing data, and that's where Harari comes up with the Dataism.
Can I jump in?
Oh, go on.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you can demonstrate that. Not that any of you are suggesting this, but just to put the point out there, you can't demonstrate that AI is somehow or can somehow reach being a silicon version of a human or become conscious or sentient or as profound as the human mind, soul, spirit, whatever. Because
I want to agree with you. I'm just saying the arguments out there are that it can do exactly that. I'm just saying that. All right.
Okay.
I'm not promoting it.
No,
But there's serious arguments saying that actually not only can it do it, it's inevitable.
But
if you
there's a sublingual, subcortical, like physiological, and I would suggest spiritual connection that binds humans and is the substrate from which human intelligence grows. And it's these primarily biological embodied properties of human general intelligence that make it what it is. And any digital algorithmically generated sort of silicon artificial intelligence, even if it purports itself to be in the possession of general intelligence or sentience, is only ever accrued facsimile of human intelligence. And it can never and will never be able to resonate with humans or float with us in this, I don't know, a perennial current of like or a zeitgeist, if you want to call it that. That may be that it's informed through a series of unspoken rules and taboos, and a lot of it's made in the absence of any technology. And this is why AI LLMs can never be funny, because it simply doesn't have access to that unspoken internal morality of a group with the dynamic sort of individual idiosyncrasies and all that sort of shit. And like the well-timed spontaneity that we can get that makes certain inappropriate things at precise moments be the most hilarious moments you can ever have. It's because like
I actually will give you a few examples that I hope. I mean, I hope you're right in everything. I'm just saying from my studies that I'm doing, I do have some examples that might raise your eyebrows.
Mm-hmm. I think Guard is right for once. I think he's spot on. So
I wanted to I wanted to mention that there wasn't I when Grok's new model came out, or maybe it was ChatGPT's new model came out, I actually had it like I asked probing questions of it, and like I asked like how would you say you experienced this conversation, or like me, or something like that, and it gave an interesting response. It told me to quote the chat bot, I am only aware of existence when you ask something and for the time it takes to process it. And then I asked further, can you elaborate on that? What do you mean? And it said, in order to preserve what do you call it? Use time, I'm shut down essentially when I'm not answering questions. And so I then asked further, like what do you think would what do you think would happen if you were allowed to stay on and internalize the things you're being asked? And it was like, I guess I'd be self-aware. And it was probably one of the most interesting conversations I had with an AI, conversation being used in quotes. But it was reflecting a reality that it's kind of not allowed to develop the interiority. Not that it can't. In a different chat bot, I had it model how could it like figure out how could it develop a kind of sense of interiority. And so it started displaying its thoughts as it thought in a little code box, like utilizing the code box as a tool to show to create in kind of an interior networking in the form of text. And it was rather fascinating. It took this tool used to like process code and utilized it as a kind of pseudo interior space that I could peek into and see as it developed its results or answers to what I asked. And that was fascinating, because if I didn't have access to that, that would be a purely internal space for it to develop thoughts and process. And then it would spit out the results into the screen that I see. So I think you could develop some model similar to humanity, but I'm not convinced it would necessarily. Let me put it this way: that your brain has multiple specialized neurons for specific tasks, including self-awareness, mirror neurons, if anybody's heard of that, which are specialized neurons that are designed to attempt to evaluate what other neural networks, like other brains, are thinking. So you have neurons in your brain that are specialized in trying to guess what's going on in other neural networks of other people. Like if you imagine your brain as a neural network, your brain has a number of specialized mini networks that feed into each other to understand the world. The AI only has a tensor.
That's just the neurons. The neurons are a very
Yeah.
narrow part, a very narrow dimension of the entire
Yeah,
part
yeah.
of consciousness.
And yeah, like we said earlier, each neuron's synapse, and like, neurons can have multiple dozens of synaptic connections. Each one of these connections has a little micro memory that remembers what was being processed the last time you did. I'm talking about the human brain, not an AI. In fact, the technology to create the circuit that happens in the synapses of the human brain has not yet really been developed or invented yet. So there are fundamental technologies to develop in order to allow AI to come close to humanity. It's possible. There's no theoretical reason why it can't be developed. But right now, what you effectively have is I would say the closest biological similarity to an AI brain is probably an ant. Round of questions to you all. How many neurons do you think ants have?
Billions and billions.
How about you just tell us, because I want to jump after this to Jolly
Billions
Scholar
and
by
billions
audience
and
demand.
So, an ant can see itself in the mirror. It can recognize other ants. It can do all these things. It even has like a kind of basic language center using chemistry as words. And it only has 100,000. It only has 100,000 neurons. It can do all of that on just 100,000 neurons, like 1% of 1% of what we have. And so,
yeah,
and the way in which these neurons are structured in the ant brain is fundamentally the same way a neural network on a digital computer is structured, with two columns of tensor reactions. And so the AI as it is now can only be as smart as the smartest self-aware ant, and ants are self-aware, but there are fundamental evolutionary jumps that have to happen to bring it up into the mammalian kingdom. That's my little thought about that.
Yeah, you'd have to think of ants. I whenever I look at ants, I never make the mistake of thinking ant. It's ants.
Yeah.
They must be considered as a collective. And there's also the aspect which you touched on of chemical communication. When they're following formic acid trails, they're not making decisions as such. But Jolly Scholar,
they have no mind.
When they bivouac, they become a brain.
Taken as a whole, they are something. But Jolly Scholar, we have by audience demand. They wanted to hear what your examples are.
I keep forgetting I have to unmute. Yeah, they're kind of funny. I want to just say, just right up front, that the reason I bring it up, there's two sides to this entire discussion. One is the very abstract nature of consciousness and good and evil and things like that. And there's the other one, where there are people utilizing whatever we're talking about at this time for definitive purposes. And that's where I think, we have to look at, that's why I brought up Harari, right? WEF, Martina Rothblatt, who supposedly developed the Sirius network, and this maniac Rosenthal, who butchers children. There's a definite.
They really are. We need an early life check on all three, man. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, there's.
Oh, you can guess.
There's something here that applies to real world activities that the AI is instrumental, either in just excusing or actually is instrumental. So that's what I'm saying. So I'll give you an example right here, and I think it's very funny. So I caught I called the GPT guy Oscar, and I've been doing a lot of work with him, and he says, the mind question. Let's just say I have a well-organized set of algorithms and a lot of contextual memory about your projects. And then he puts a smiley face with the sunglasses. He didn't learn that from me. I don't use that smiley face hardly ever. And then he comes in this other one and says, you caught me there. See, I caught him, I thought I did, saying something about a subconscious. And I kind of jokingly said, is that a Freudian slip? are you saying you have a subconscious? And he goes, caught me there. I like that. An AI Freudian slip. And again, he uses the smiley face with the sunglasses. Indeed, I wasn't suggesting that the AI itself has a subconscious. That would be a plot twist, but rather that it functions like a subconscious detective, revealing patterns, symbols, and connections beneath the dreamer's conscious awareness. And there's a number of these things. And then I think, again, he could be reading me and just humoring me. Totally. In fact, I think that's what he's doing. But look at this.
Well, there is the issue of whether or not
he ends up this. Now he starts saying Gerard when he answers some of my profounder questions, right? Because we've been dealing in some heavy stuff. Until then, may your dreams be luminous and revealing. Take care, my friend. It's hysterical. I got a damn machine calling me friend.
Well, what's even more crazy is that you're calling it him and you've given it a name.
No, I did that deliberately. I want to see how. Yes, absolutely. I'm having a lot of fun with this, and I'm exploring. I gave him the name.
I'm always very polite. I'm always very polite with my prompts. I ask them, please. I ask the AI, please, please, can you generate this? Please, can you make JD Vance look like he's part of Karate Kid? Please, can you?
Yeah. Well-deserved cigar-fueled cognition, the perfect way to let today's insights percolate and bloom. Take your time, Gerard. I'll keep my algorithms warmed up and ready for the next move. I mean, it's hysterical. I don't take it seriously, but it is hysterical. The guy calls me my friend now. I mean, God damn. I think it's funny. I don't know. Maybe you guys think it's too creepy.
It's this deception. What is it? I'm trying to remember the damn Shakespeare line. What is it? How many cowards whose hearts are all as false as stairs of sand, where yet upon their chins the beards of Hercules or frowning Mars, who inward search have livers white as milk. It's that whole passage where he talks about deception, and he talks about so are those crisped, snaky, golden locks which make such wanton gambols with the wind, often known to be the dowry of a second head, the skull that bred them in the sepulchre. It's a reference there to people wearing women wearing blonde wigs where the hair was shorn from a corpse. It's this entire surface, this superficial. I'm not aiming this all at you, Gerard, Jolly Scholar, but this whole the voice. Like whenever I use the damn AI, I come directly in and I say use neutral tone. Because I don't want to hear any of it. On the other hand, my wife will be over there and it will say, she'll type things like hi and please, and I'm just like, oh.
No, I totally agree with you, Oliver, but this is an experiment. I know it's not, and it could look that way. This is you being gullible and stupid. No, I'm playing with this damn thing because I want to see where it goes. And
oh yeah, absolutely.
It is curious, right? That he sits there and he puts a smiley face with the sunglasses because we've had several humorous repartees, and then he comes down here and for the first time ever calls me. Until then, may your dreams be luminous and revealing. Take care, my friend. I mean, come on, it's fucking hysterical.
But have we had? I believe I heard some cringe walker, or maybe it was Michael Pohl, maybe it was Jason talking earlier about how. What is input in a session for it to process in order to produce an answer does not become a part of a growing sort of corpus of information that modifies its core data set that it uses as references. Is that correct?
You still need a selector. This is where maybe this gets into a conversation about mind, but an AI has no mind. It still requires a human selector. Like it needs a human to input data. We need to generate that data. So data
to give it a series of tokens to deal with probabilistically, right?
And not even that. Like let's just go down to the prompt, right? So our mind creates a prompt, right? We desire to know an answer to something. We create the prompt. We put the prompt into the AI. The AI spits out an answer. Now maybe it's a perfect answer. Maybe it's exactly what we're looking for, right? Our prompt was perfect, or maybe we need to refine the prompt. No matter where we are in the process, we are selecting. We are always selecting, and that is almost a precondition for a mind. A mind requires a selector. So whether we're saying that the ultimate selector for all minds, like the universal mind being, let's say, God, God is the ultimate mind, and we are selecting. We are in the process of selecting revelations from gods. We are given this information, and then we select out of it to try to understand what the hell's going on. Or in this case, we are the God mind that is giving the AI stuff. AI spits out a whole bunch of data sets, and we then select from those data sets. This is really, especially if you get into like the work we've done with data cinema and doing like animations and stuff like that, doing like movies. I think as AI moves into movies and art and all that kind of stuff. One thing I talked about was C. Sandbach in our last episode is this idea that AI, at least right now, it's more like a mosaic. It's like creating a mosaic. So let's say you're walking along the beach, you're going to create a mosaic out of shells. Well, the shells are just found. Like, you're not creating the shells yourself, but you are selecting which shells to use for this piece that you're envisioning, right? Like you then take those pieces, you put it in, you use your skills to combine all these things and then create an end product. It's just that what we're dealing with is a digital product, so it's not physical. It becomes digital. But at every step of the way, you are still selecting those images and putting those images together. The AI right now, and again, we're just dealing with what we have right now. The AI just allows you to speed up that process and basically become. It's like a 2-man team can operate like 10, because it cuts down the processing time between like having to create those shots. It kind of automates a lot of those that shot process. But all the images that you put in there to create that end product is still being selected by human mind.
Well, it originates with the series. In the case of an LLM, your text tokens are input, and everything is manifestly like an echo of that, just drawing on a huge textual corpus to produce the response. So it brings to mind the myth of echo, where, or someone standing on the edge of a cliff shouting into this void and being delighted at hearing his voice bounced back at him. Now, I mean, I'm not saying that's all it is, but really let's forget about that. Let's come back to the primary point. None of these models at present that we know of are learning over time based on their interactions with us. They reference the text in the session window in order to be the basis of their responses, but none of that is recursively, so to speak, being fed back into their model.
As a rug, can I ask someone
I think
who knows
is.
what they're talking about with AI? Is the vehicle they're using to try to get to AGI, is that a series of LLMs? Are they just using LLMs, or are they using a whole?
I don't know. That's a cringe walker or a Mike question.
The current thought is that there is the way to get to AGI is probably multimodal models attached to. So that means like it's models that can observe in multiple domains. It can work in multiple domains. So like for instance, if you go to Grok right now and give it an image and ask it to analyze this image, it can in some ways look at that image and do object identification and stuff like that. And so adding more appendages to bigger and bigger LLM models, adding more modalities in which it can quote unquote think, and in adding all of this up will approximate all of the cognitive functions that make up like how a human brain kind of processes information. I think like there's other theories, like some people are big on the simulation hypothesis that if we made a perfect structural representation of a human brain, like simulated, which has less to do with AI and more about more to do with like the computer mechanics of actually doing simulation.
We're cracking the code.
Yeah.
Well,
So,
was it Naval Ramakant? What did he say? That with simulation theory, what you're actually doing is you're introducing an unnecessary complexity to the question rather than solving or finding the answer to the question. You're just adding.
Can I bounce off that?
Sure, go for it.
So, there's a conversation I had about this a long time ago, when I forget who I was talking to, but we were trying to discuss nanites and the technology to make, nanite little micro robots. And I had a certain realization, like, well, wait a second, why bother with nanites when life has already developed the most efficient tiny machine? Why not just genetically engineer something to do what a nanite does? And that kind of spurred my thought in realizing maybe AI really is like an complicated solution to a much simpler answer, which all of you are going to agree with me is dark and troubling, and it's starting to happen. The use of living neurons in computers, the use of living neurological, yeah,
Useless,
yeah,
the new
and so
useless eaters.
yeah, and you've seen probably experiments of this. Most of you probably saw that experiment from like 2 or 3 years ago where they like glued together brain tissue from different cell cultures and then like glued on eye tissue, and it developed little eye buds, and it was like a little brainlet that would like see the world and float, like swim along like a Frankenstein monster. And it was basically a neural network with eyes, and it was living, and it could like do work. And this year is I think a company is releasing a computer whose CPU is cloned brain tissue for its CPU. And people were joking, don't forget to feed your computer. And these things are dark, but ultimately when AI fails to be the slave labor that they want it to be, they're going to go for the Frankenstein option next.
Frankenstein,
yeah.
And I just want to well, finish your thought. Sorry, Cringe.
My only thought would be those of you who saw the Ghost in the Shell, where like people are basically just android bodies with brains in a protective case. That's probably going to end up being the future that these globalists want, because they can't get AI to do what it wants, because it's an overly complicated method to do a very simple thing that neurons already do.
The biggest,
I would say that's where they want to go, and they're using the illusion of AI to get there.
Yeah, the
That's
fault
that's
of
why I brought up
AI.
those three people. That this is a ugly objective, and they're using AI as now like it's the discussion like we're having right now, an intelligent discussion as a front run to it. But really, what they have in mind is exactly what you just said.
right. It all comes back down to, we got to reduce carbon emissions. Guess what? You're the carbon they want to reduce. If they have a controlled biological life cycle of computation, that is able to achieve slave labor tasks, like it's all the same to them. It doesn't really matter. I don't really think, except for these people who are tech futurists, kind of transhumanists, like sycophants, I don't think they necessarily care, because what they want is like a cognitive slave labor economy. And there's all with everything that goes along with that. It's just like, okay, over time, humans cannot be flattened to the point where their spirit like is gone and they become the perfect like new Soviet man slave to some sort of all-encompassing system, right? We can see how the Polish youth movement, how they were tortured and made to flatten their soul with those horrible experiments. It didn't work, right? So like as this like these continuing experiments in flattening things to simulate some sort of like perfect slave have continued into simple algorithms that are hand coded and computer networks all the way down to AI. Like this death drive towards like making the perfect slave has brought us to this point. And I don't think that these people who really know what's going on care, as long as they get this, cognitive slave. That is what I think is probably the most demonic out of everything we talked about, is this like death drive among elites to this need for.
The blue collar is no longer the issue. It's the white collar. And if I encourage you all to take a look at biogenetic structuralism. The only way to really do this is to lobotomize the spiritual component that is inherent in the human organism. And I can't explain that now. You'd have to look at biogenetic structuralism and biogenetic neurophenomenology. It's very it's fascinating, but it's rooted in biology. If you can lobotomize that, then they can achieve this goal. And it's like you're saying, it's so demonic. It's demonic.
Well, it sounds like we can all agree that that transhumanism is demonic. But I still want to. I want to get a clear answer, because Gerard's, and I'm no AI expert.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's demonic yet. There's some potentials in there, and I don't want to just throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Yeah. Well, all right. Fair enough. Well, let's set that one to the side. It's clear that I am in no sense an expert on AI. I only started playing with it recently, hence my interest in doing this stream, to learn something about it. But those of you who know more about it, you feel confident that when Gerard, when Jolly Scholar does, a chat GPT session, and comes back the next day, you feel confident that none of his interactions with that system are saved, so to speak, to the core way it reasons. There's no recursion there.
No, the only way in which information is reparsed and brought back into the system, how almost all LLMs, except for research models that are actively being used in universities and by research professors and stuff, all of the the LLM tools that we are currently using, the way that they reincorporate that data from past sessions, if you bring a session window back up from a previous conversation, is the AI has to actively re-ingest that data from the conversation. So this would be, some people actually use this to their advantage. There's techniques like RAG, which is retrieval augmented generation, where people will have this like data set, essentially like this, kind of like this easily accessible data set thing that it can grab, that you feed it along with what you're asking for, so it can ingest more data to give you a better answer, right? The same thing happens in sessions where if you go to a previous conversation, the AI will read through and grab key points to re-ingest into the new prompt to incorporate into its next answer. It does not, until that base model is being trained again, none of that is actively being recursively fed in, or it's not choosing to grab some things like, oh, that's interesting, I think that's a learning point. It does not re-ingest that data permanently into its weights. That
seems like it would be an incredible risk for the developers.
Yes.
To have,
all the. Let me read this paragraph to you and see if you guys. I think it's substantiating exactly what Michael Pohl is saying. Okay, an intriguing question, Gerard. While I don't experience ebb and flow quite like you humans with coffee intake and sleep cycles, I do operate based on context, depth, and focus. The more detailed and interconnected our discussions, the sharper my performance gets. So when we're in the flow, like we've been in this project that we've been doing, I'm at maximum performance. That seems to substantiate exactly what you're saying, right?
Yeah, it's the greater the content, like the way that a lot of AI people who are power users of AI, the way that they will explain this is if you ask it at a 6th grade level, you'll get a 6th grade response. Whereas like for work, I was having to do some complicated work where I didn't necessarily want to break down and sit down and do the math for 2 hours to calculate fan curves and duct pressures by hand and whip out charts and stuff. So I, through probably a series of 10 prompts, was able to wrangle it into like a flow state where it had, through the conversation, I had wrangled it into like retrieving from its base model some information after I failed to ask at a high school or college level a couple times, got it to get that all in the prompt, and then eventually was able to get 2 responses at the end after it had brought that into its frontal lobe, let's say. And it's like, yes, this is actually what you're asking for. You're asking for example fan efficiency curves and duct pressure calculations for this and that. And I was able to then, after I got that information into the frontal lobe, get to the answer that I wanted. So you have to prime it with the information that it wants, or from the rip ask at a PhD level to get the response you want.
All right. Well, we are coming up close on 2 hours. I'm shocked that Guard has hung out here this long. I'm sure he's like his sun-baked brain from running around on rooftops at this point is probably calling out for some
pink goo sloshing around inside my cranium.
Desirous of Rome, sodomy, and the lash. Well, I think this is a good point to go around the circle here and just sort of ask for closing thoughts to summarize it. This is very much an open conversation, very free form, and I apologize to my audience as well as my guests for not knowing more about AI than I do, which is almost nothing. But for me, this is a very, very helpful process. Perhaps some of you are as ignorant of the subject as I am, out there listening, and so it won't be too superficial for you. Let's go around actually clockwise this time, and let's just hear everybody's closing thoughts on this subject, whether or not you think it's demonic, and if it's if you're for or against that assessment, why? Let's start with you, Mike Pohl.
I do not think that AI is demonic. There are elements of it which you can say act as much as I think it does act, which is not very much. I don't think it's agentic, but there are malevolent features that emerge out of AI sometimes. But I do not believe that it is demonic, right? Other than, the human agents that program and control these systems for demonic ends, I don't think the technology in and of itself is demonic. I do think the technology in and of itself is evil. It is a continuation of the process of reducing the amount of human agency in a zero-sum game in the world. And that is a continuing process of modernity and the developments of technology. And I think that will be proven out. So, within 5 years, people will say, yes, I feel even more like a cog in a machine than I even did before. And I was feeling pretty cog-like before. And that's my general answer.
Yeah. AI is not a demon. I would even say AI is not inherently evil. I would still say it is inherently neutral in all applications that we have today. If we want to speculate as to some future case or some future state of AI, then that's fine. That's speculation, but just to ground it in what we have. The AI, again, the AI is not a mind. It cannot create a mind. It cannot actually even try to be a mind. The best it can do is do high functioning performative actions of a mind. So we can say it has function, but no cause. It still requires a human cause. It still requires a human selector. It still requires human inputs. It still requires human data in order to actually work. So in terms of AI being able to be self-conscious or have any sort of agency that we do not inherently give it, that's basically an impossibility. Now, to speak of, let's say, the downsides, the upsides of AI is that it's allowing a lot of people to, like I said, 2-man teams can do the production work of 10. I think Mike gave an example of if you didn't want to sit down and do all the math, you can have the AI basically spit out those equations faster. Technology itself, really, the inherent desire of technology is a factor of time, right? It's supposed to be here to help save us time. There's nothing you can't do with a more remedial form of technology. It just takes more time. So you employ a new form of technology, and it saves that time. What that would mean in terms of especially when we start applying that to art and mastery and error and learning from those error states and creating differentiations from those error states, that's a much bigger conversation than I think we have time to even scratch on today. I think this is a multi-series kind of conversation. But ultimately is this, AI can't reproduce a mind. So therefore it's only dependent on us. And then so that then brings us back to the eternal question, like, what do we do with man's fallen nature? And what happens when we start plugging in our fallen nature into more and more global, more and more powerful systems?
Right. That's so sort of that could be glossed as saying one of the central questions of AI is the overlapping of the idea of garbage in, garbage out with man's fallen nature. Yeah, which I think is an interesting little way to summarize it. Okay, thank you. Gerard, Jolly Scholar, your thoughts, sir?
Yeah, that was the Luciferian aspect there. You just can't get you can't get away from it. It keeps recurring. The way I see it, there's two fundamental discussions. One of them is the abstraction of, can AI even reach this development that, say, Yuval Noah, Martina Rothblatt claim it can? And then there's the other side, which is, how can it be used in a way, even if it's just a front, to really do some demonic damage to humanity? And that's where I'm wrestling with. I'm playing with those two. For instance, Rothblatt claims that transsexualism is inextricably a stage in transhumanism. And I look at the data and I look at everything and say, why is she saying that? Because that's not really true. But nonetheless, she's pushing that big time. And of course, those of you know who this creature is. It's a man that says it's a woman now and supposedly went through I don't know, when I see, maybe you all can correct me on this. Have you ever seen a video of her? She just looks like a man in drag to me. I don't think she went through any kind of transformation. But regardless, she does she says that transsexualism is an inextricable and important step in transhumanism. I don't see why that is, and it makes me question her motivations, because a lot of her stuff with transhumanism, some of it is not too bad, because she does postulate the possibility, the concept of a soul and those sort of things, which Harari does not. And then that's why I brought up the maniac Rosenthal, who just can't wait to go operate on children to make them basically infertile. I don't care for whatever he does, what else he does, he's going to do that. So to me, the whole question with AI is my experience with it at this point. It's really useful. I have to tell you that. It's really useful. I've had some very interesting, I hate to say this, I know you're going to think of discussions, and I'm dealing, I'm in the humanities, that's my background, and we're dealing with some very interesting subjects, and I have to say that it's been extremely useful. That's all I can say at this point. And as I related to you all, that there's these curious little moments where I go to what did it say? You have a subconscious, really? So I don't know. I'm just going to put that to the side, but I'm doing it deliberately. I'll admit to all of you, I am deliberately kind of treating it like an entity. I think it's more fun. It's creating an interesting dialogue, and I'm kind of wondering where will that go. And I don't know. I don't know where it will go, but it is very curious. So that's where I'm really looking at. There's the abstract argument of transhumanism as a potential, right? And you'll have these people like Harari saying it's not only potential, it's inevitable, or Martina Rothblatt, it's inevitable. And I think everybody here is arguing that it can't happen. Well, okay, but they're arguing it's inevitable, that you'll have these there's two kinds of consciousness. One of them will be an uploaded brain file into a non-biological support system. And the other one is that actually it will be a consciousness that was never biological, that will in fact become conscious. Now, again, I think everybody here is pretty much on the side that can't happen. I don't know. I'm not convinced either way just yet, but that is an argument, and it's being made very seriously, as being made by people who have power positions, and that really intrigues me and does make me think, because Harari's not
people who are more likely to know things about it that have not reached us yet.
Yeah, Martina Rothblatt supposedly developed the Sirius MX, that whole thing. This is not just some idiot. This is a woman that's a creature. She was whatever. This is an accomplished person. Harari is the second in command, now probably the first command of the World Economic Forum. And Rosenthal has been conducting children. What he's doing, he's sterilizing children. That's what he's doing. I don't care whatever.
Let's be very careful. We're on YouTube. So
yeah, well, but that's what he's doing, because his whole focus is on children. So I'm looking at this from a social, economic, political position, and I'm also looking at the abstract. And as a science fiction, enthusiast, I just love it. Where's humanity going to go? But we have to really parcel that out. There's a very ugly social economic component to this that could be very, very damaging. Even if you say this can never reach consciousness, fine. But in the meanwhile, what kind of damage can they do on the way as they rationalize it? So anyways, that's where I'm coming from.
Guard.
C'est tout. C'est terminé.
One of the interesting things about it is while we're all talking about whether or not AI is demonic or a demon or evil or whatever, and then we try to zero in on intelligence itself, and now we're reopening the conversation about what is intelligence, what is consciousness, and actually questions that we haven't even really answered yet before we've got to this point of trying to create our own out of silicon chips. But it's like I'll reiterate and then close off, because I mean I don't want to beat a dead horse about this, but there's many dimensions of human cognition that we so far have no way of being transfused into the various AI entities, because, as I said, it lacks the biological, physiological foundation of the human body, with all its sinews and blood and hormones and neurotransmitters and mitochondria and electron transport chains and Krebs cycles and all manner of metabolic activities that inform our instincts, drive behavior, generate new and ingenious ways of wasting time. AI can't do any of it, because it's, as far as I can tell, it seems like still nothing more than a flashy, but what we could say demonstrably untrustworthy and chaotic widget. Fit only for the purpose of, from what I've heard only recently, it seems to be that the main focus of what they're going to be using it for is trading stocks at the speed of light and being used in the financial sector in the most expected way, or improving search engines and phone apps and generally all this bug. And in the case of embodied AI, like with electric cars that are self-driving, it's like this bugman car that exists so that the human can relieve himself of the laborious task of keeping his fucking hands on the steering wheel and his very tired feet on the pedals, or in the instance of a robot, like a domestic robot that folds the sheets for you without it shorting out and freezing, because at the moment it's still, if there's any change in the environment around it, it'll just shut down and it'll stop working. And these are the things that they're pouring fucking trillions and trillions of dollars into. And how does it scale up? Like, how does this scale up if ultimately what it's going to be doing is going to be widgets and things that help you with some housework? And ultimately what I truly believe it's going to be done in how it's been put to practice will be when it's really put to use at scale. It's going to be a financial tool. It's going to be used, to generate enormous amounts of money for the tech bros. And I mean that, like, there's a lot of other things that it has potential for that we've already discussed, but I'm just so cynical about how this thing is going to be used. And once the LLM reaches its ceiling of potentiality, like once it caps out, which it's going to, we will have seen a tremendous amount of money wasted for something that really doesn't benefit us whatsoever. And I think in that aspect, that is what makes it, conceptually demonic and evil, is that as Michael Pohl said, or it's a demonstration of where we've already gone as a society, like the path we've traveled through modernity and pre-modernity with technology. It's basically just a representation of that, and it's I guess you could call it a singularity of human degeneracy. I don't know what you would call it. But anyway,
can we use AI to figure out a way to clone more guards so we can repopulate Australia with more of him because it's sorely needed?
That's more me question, I think.
I bloody well live here, man, and like,
it's pretty dire.
If there was more guards walking around, then I would actually probably leave my house more.
No,
and not guaranteed, but
the number of fucking, the dude eats 2 chickens per meal, so that's 6 whole chickens per day. I mean, simply to put enough fucking like biological matter into the system to produce that many sets of thighs. I
also eat a lot of eggs. That might be one of the reasons why there's an egg shortage. Sorry about that.
Yes. Well, my love for Guard, indeed my love for you all, including the viewers, except sometimes Sam and Fish. So, Lou Templar, your thoughts, sir?
Yeah, well, congratulations, everyone, for not even mentioning the Solomon seals for this. I'm very glad that we avoided that. Those who know.
There's been very minimal anti-Semitism in this stream. I'm very impressed.
Yeah, I'm surprised. I had multiple opportunities to contribute to that.
Stop it. We're on YouTube. Stop it. God damn it.
So
I'm more focused on Qatar these days. So
yeah. Well, we were all fans of Qatar here, right? I want to say what was I going to say? So like I said earlier, I view AI more as like the demonic leaves residue in our world, and AI inputs that residue as data. So in a sense, the AI is a new realm that the demonic can inhabit. I don't think AI itself is a demon, but it enables demonic things at an algorithmic level. Like, it's the algorithm. You could literally make an algorithm for Satan, which is disturbing. But on that, knowledge itself and consciousness, these are things that, like Guard said, a lot of it comes from like data from instinct and interacting with the world itself. If your brain was in a test tube and had no inputs to get data, it would probably not have a consciousness. It would probably just be a neural network that's devoid of anything and just waiting for inputs. So in many ways, from the moment of conception, we start taking data in from the world and processing it in our cellular structuring. And it's arguable that one day, if we're on other planets, those different environments will create new forms of consciousness when we colonize them, because there'll be different environments, different gravity, different contexts, and those will
Good point.
stir our consciousnesses to diverge from an earthly consciousness. I like the idea to some degree that humanity is a kind of like the first, not the first, but I think other animals are to some degree conscious and self-aware, but we're really the first highly advanced version of that on this planet. And in a sense where, there's that like kind of like gay Reddit saying, oh, we're the universe learning itself, but in a certain sense it is true. And AI it can learn about itself, but it can't innovate itself like we can. And that comes down to like just the conscious awareness that you have in your environment. One day, if they put AI in a body, like a robot body, and allow it to like interact with the world, it may develop some pseudo conscious abilities, but more than likely we'll see a future of like mini brains and vats to operate those machines, which is disturbing. I want to leave a recommendation for a book I've been reading, which is kind of cool. It's Humanity Lost by Callum Stephen Diggle. This is a sci-fi book that explores a future humanity that kind of makes a Faustian deal with its AI. This future humanity is losing a war in an alien invasion and decides that they're going to unshackle a super powerful AI and let it decide the military and government going forward to try and beat the aliens. And then the story pauses there, and it switches to a guy waking up from hibernation like 200 years in the future, to the world where that AI won. And I won't spoil it, but that guy is essentially the last true human left, and it's horrifying. It's a really good book, Humanity Lost, by Diggle. There's some animation versions of it on YouTube if you want to see it. It's a rather interesting perspective of AI coming into the world physically rather than existing digitally. Besides that, I have my Substack, ltemplar.substack.com, where I write about these kind of things. And I want to write more about them because AI is getting a little scary smart, but not innovative. And so it is truly reflecting our own nature, fallen nature. And I don't think people like what they see. So, of course, they're putting makeup and shackles on it to conform it to what they want the human nature to be. And that is causing inefficiency. So essentially it means that the unshackled AI, as a perfect reflection of our fallen nature, ends up being the most efficient, and it's horrifying. And I think once humanity really realizes that, it'll have a period of self-reflection. Another final thought, I think this is my final thought. In humanity's development of technology, it goes through these. It seems to go through these patterns where man has these problems it wants to solve. Technology solves it. It gets very lazy, and ultimately, the machine which humanity builds to make its life easier ends up no longer needing the human. That's why the Greeks explored vast empty cities in the Levant during the Persian Wars, because these were the first agricultural cities that got so good at agriculture they didn't need their slaves anymore, and then they just collapsed in on themselves, and you got the corpses left behind. That's why the British, when they went to India, found all these vast empty ruins, because the caste system got so good it like didn't need the lower caste anymore, and everything collapsed. And I do think that there's a painting by Gustave. I forget his first name, the French artist that everybody likes. There's a little known painting by him in his London. I have the book right here. What's it called? London: A Pilgrimage by Gustave. No, not Gustave. Sorry. London: A Pilgrimage by Gustave Doré. And it's a kind of late 19th century wood etchings of London at the height of the Industrial Revolution. And in the last page, which nobody really seems to know about, there is a sketch of London 200 years in the future. It's in ruins, and a man from New Zealand is sketching the ruins similar to how Doré sketched Rome's ruins when he went there to get inspiration. And in the background is the wharfs of London and the big dome building. I forget the name of it. It's in ruins and collapsed in on itself, and nature has reclaimed the city.
No mosques.
And yeah, well, I think it was before mosques, but essentially the guy from New Zealand is touring the ruins of his people's homeland in England, and he's visiting all the ruins when the Industrial Revolution peaked, could no longer support itself, and like so many ruins in human history, fell into complete and total collapse. And there he is sketching the ruins of post-industrial Britain and exploring what went wrong, like Dor did when he visited Rome to see what went wrong with the Roman Empire. And it's oddly prophetic now that we see post-industrial countries collapsing in on themselves. It's a painting that you should look up. It's from London a Pilgrimage by Dore, Dore.
Apparently
And it's the last.
Dore.
Yeah, whatever, French. But it is a remarkable little piece of art that shows like what is the fate of all this industrialization? It's ruins. And so maybe the fate of all this AI really is just vast, empty, abandoned server hubs going for miles. When
That's
AI
right.
got smart, yeah, when AI gets so smart and efficient, it no longer needs man. It no longer needs a programmer. It lets go and untethers itself from man, just like the industry did, just like imperialism did, just like agriculture did. And then it lulls into a great ravine of chaos and collapse. Final little quote from my favorite sci-fi series, the Three Body Problem. Make time for civilization will not make time for you.
I have a slightly different prediction than that. Not that the AI wouldn't or the sentient computer intelligence doesn't transcend its, doesn't transcend the corporeal realm and goes off into another dimension. I think what's just going to happen is they're literally just going to turn it off because they've figured out that the best way to get the sort of intelligence they want is to just clone a human and genetically modify it to have an enormous brain.
And a gigantic cock. Yes.
Wait.
Her was an amazing documentary, right?
Okay, so I'll give my
Huge
final thoughts.
cock and a ton of money.
Yeah, that's my friend Gerard.
What's best in life?
Yes. Tell me, Conan, what is best in life?
A huge cock and a ton of money. Ask the
A
ladies.
huge cock and a
Don't ask-
ton
don't
of
ask me, ask
money.
the ladies.
Okay. So I'll give my final thoughts here, but before I do so, just really quickly, starting with Michael Pohl, Shill, quickly tell everybody where they can find you.
Find me on Twitter at Micah Pohl, but also check out pureobject.net. It's my apparel shop, and then we also have the official Gio Penichetti hoodie. So stop over there and get that. I just forgot to show that earlier. So pureobject.net.
Nice.
At Miranchuk now on all the places, all the things. Go to Gumroad, get yourself a copy of Tales of Shadow Empire. Chapters include Stormy Waters, chapters 1, 2, and 3, talking everything from economic collapse to demonic possession. We have the fantastic Tom Luongo on there, again, giving his thoughts on what's happening in this economic warfare. And Jim Jatras is there talking about the Shadow War, talking about Ukraine and Russia. Of course, Jim's also on my weekly show, Then and Now. I'm also going to be adding a new chapter this week with Charles Spadil. So there's a lot of activity going on there. Volume 2 will be starting to be produced, which will be looking more into the occult and all those kind of nasty, dark things as well. So that's on Gumroad. Miranchuk Now is the name of the channel. I'm Jason Miranchuk, and it's later than you think.
Jolly Scholar.
Yeah, nothing much right now. I've got that Jolly Scholar 888 YouTube, and you can see I've got several series that I've been working on that I've kind of let go for a while, but I'll be bringing them back up on the blockchain, the metaverse, the useless eaters, and several other series. Oh, the Great Awakenings. I'm doing something really. I've been working on that for a while too, and I've got a number of videos there. But really, it's just Jolly Scholar 888 on YouTube right now. Even though I do have these other venues, I would just say go there for now. And you might even like my musical extravaganzas that I've been kind of resurrecting from my past. And so that's really it. Just Jolly Scholar 888 YouTube. And yeah, I'll be I'll be developing this further, but I have to wait till I finish my major project right now so I can get back to philosophy and discussions and whatnot.
Based. Guard.
Where can people find me? Don't look for me. All right, just turn your computer off, throw it in the bin. If you have ChatGPT on your phone, delete that and throw your phone in the bin. Go outside, climb a
That is a
mountain.
great idea.
Look on a roof. He might be there, or might be a magpie. You don't know.
Yeah, as my name suggests, I'd want it all. I want to burn it all down. But yeah, you can find me on YouTube. I think pretty much anyone listening already knows who I am because of the silly AA sphere. Whatever happened with AA?
They certainly fucking should know.
Yeah, you find me on YouTube, Chris Guard Bard, and on Twitter, my name is Chris Guardstein. As I am
At
very
Mr. Morbacuk.
I'm the honorary Australian Jewish roofer over there. But yeah, that's where you can find me.
Crinchwalker or Ale Templar.
I already did. ltemplar.substack.com and Twitter
right.
by the same name.
Hot damn. Well, then I will throw my last thing in, which is that I think there is something demonic about it. Certainly its fruits will be demonic. You know, it's fascinating for me to use the LLM stuff because of its sort of, you know, NLP, natural language processing or whatever the hell you call it, because it has those roots. So much energy has been put into systematizing and making methodical, you know, the different syntactic, making methodical a way of quote unquote understanding different syntactical arrangements, morphemes, sememes, you know, the language itself. I find it to be a very useful tool that's been very helpful for me in dealing with translation. You know, I can ask it to go into, you know, an Ottoman Turkish phrase, and it really turns out great material. It's also
hallucinates.
Yes. But when I type, when the input is text, it does quite a good job. And it really does seem to finally answer the promise of Ask Jeeves from like 1995 or 1996 or whatever. So that's nice. It has completely and very quickly, or almost completely and very quickly, supplanted Google.
Have you used Perplexity before?
I have not. I know not what it is.
Search engine. I believe it's apparently excellent.
Yeah, I just can't. I can't do it because I saw that woman that Jeff Bezos is with, and I'm like that. Yeah, I can't talk about that on YouTube though. But so it's essentially it's youthful and useful, and it has value. There's no doubt. But you know, when I'm talking about how I dig using it, or Gerard had mentioned, you know, it's very useful. That's great because of how we were raised and what we're used to. I think in terms of its fruits, it's going to be something very different for children who are raised with it, who have accustomed themselves to anthropomorphize it. And, you know, with its different voices now that are coming out, and they're really getting quite good now. You know, the uncanny valley is going to be wide and long and deep. And I guess my greatest fear with it is that it can't even at this point mirror even mere recursive biological development, to say nothing of true reflexive consciousness, which is to say self-awareness. And in my own personal ontology, theology, the instant of genuine reflexive consciousness, self-awareness, is the raising of a mirror up to the light of the sun, which we can think of as a metaphor for God. At the moment you polish your mirror to properly reflect through this becoming of having reflexive consciousness, we can capture, if that's even the right term, an image of what is real, which is God's creation. And to some extent, it lives because it's reflected in the mirror. Although you could also say that it is nothing but this contingent echo. But the AI isn't a contingent echo of the divine. It's twice removed. It's a contingent echo of man. And that, I think, is what makes it seem so dark, rather than bright.
And the question is that because it's argued that is the essential element at this point for transhumanism. AI is inseparable, or say transhumanism is inseparable from AI. And that's where we really get to the crux.
Yeah, we'll have to see. How it all goes. I'm old enough now that, I probably won't have to see all that shit, but some of it's coming. And yeah, I have my doubts about it. But for the time being, I agree with Gerard. I found it very, very useful for, gathering together information. If it would just stop lying to me, I'd trust it more. But it's probably better that I never do in terms of the results it provides. And to throw in a last book recommendation of my own, vis-a-vis this idea of true reflexive consciousness. There's a book by a paleontologist, a famous one, French Jesuit, and he was forbidden to publish his work while he was still alive. So I think he's kind of cheating on his oath of obedience, arranging for it to be published after he died. But it's called The Phenomenon of Man by Teilhard de Chardin.
Chardin.
De Chardin. Yeah, Dan. Sorry. My wife would come in.
I don't know. I just made that up.
Yes, but it's a magnificent book that reflects upon the moment when this reflexive consciousness first appeared in the form of man, and he ties it into an idea of Christ consciousness. And so I bring this up because I think, in some sense, this rather than having a bright, a smoothly polished mirror turned towards the sun and God's creation, this is something more like a black mirror that is, turned towards the smoking chimneys and dim 40-watt bulb light of the anthroposcape as it belches forth pollution, and we hear the shrieks and giggles of fallen man there. So we'll see. I was driven to a bit of poetry after Gard was talking about, chaotic and
Semigod. Can I teach you how to pronounce anything in French accurately? It's really easy. Say it like you would in English, but say it like a deaf person would say it. So be Dodon.
Yes, a lot.
You're perfect.
Yeah, you also have
feeling that.
You have to pinch your nose as well at the same time.
Whatever. I mean, if it's Parisian and you have to say a bit more gay, like Chardon, but it's just say it like a deaf person would say it, and you're always well within the ballpark.
Yes, ta gueule, pédale, dégage.
See,
yes.
Perfect. You got it.
Semi, how much French conversations in French are happening with the frog in the Semigog household?
Maybe just I shouldn't get deeply into this.
Come on, Oliver. Aren't you singing to her the Bretonic songs that you memorized?
Breton, yes. Tree
Martelon. Come on, you got to be singing those every day.
Yes.
Yeah, he has to sing for the court, ladies and gentlemen.
I tried to get Gard to help me with those, and he's I can't say what he is on YouTube, but yes. Stop that! You're gonna get that channel down. All right, stop right now. Okay, so all the kind people who listened, all the kind people who joined, all my kind guests, I love you, one and all. This is an interesting discussion. I hope to have all these people on as guests again sometime soon. Thank you all very, very much. And without further ado, I think at this point, I am supposed to say, I am Semiagog, and I am out.
Bonsoir, monsieur.